Welcome back to the Superheroes Everyday Podcast. I'm Danny Horn. I'm here with Trevor Bolliger. Hello, Trevor.
Hey, sorry if I'm a little bit disconnected. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, is it okay to kill 1 million people or not? Like, I haven't decided.
It is tough. I know. Let's see if we can work that through together. This is Act 3 of Eternals, and if you have Mad Weary and you can't remember Act 2, just try. Try to remember this. And Icarus says, Cersei, I've missed you. I didn't want to leave. There's something And then he's whisked away by a flying monkey, which has to be one of the all-time history's greatest male relationship saves.
We have to work hard for somebody else's benefit for the bare necessities in life. And so these rich people just can't even fathom that, like, no, somebody was taking advantage of them.
There is like a multiverse of better movies that this movie could have been if they had only asked us. Why do they not ask, Trevor? Why do they do it?
You actually allow millions to die for billions to be born. But the thing is, we don't want these people to be making the decision.
He's a Snyder bro.
He's a Snyder bro.
Icarus is a Snyder bro. That explains so much about this movie, actually. All right, let's get into Act 3 of Eternals, where we lose Kingo. And worst of all, we lose Karun. Kingo says that he agrees with Icarus. He believes that they shouldn't interfere with the birth of a Celestial, which is, I guess people believe things, but he refuses to fight his family, so he is ankling. And then Karun gives this goodbye to everybody. And he says, thank you for all you've done for humanity. It has been a great honor. And I will miss you all.
And I'm in. And
I know, but
every time that there's...
that's the end. But then he's gone.
Yeah.
This is bad.
This is bad.
It's taken away two good characters and our only last remaining direct line to humanity. This is when the movie just stops being about people. Act 3, like, they talk about Earth and like we have to save Earth. But it's like they've never met a single human inhabitant of it. Like, one option for how to deal with this problem, how about you get some of those people that you know to come and help? How about you establish some human characters who could contribute to the finale? I mean, preferably Kit Harington. You start with him, but like anybody.
Yeah, there's really no humans in the third act until after the climax. And so
until after it's over. They all stay away.
Yeah. Perhaps the most ridiculous thing that Kingo says is, even with my help, we're no match. It's Icarus. Like, he's never heard of the magical power of friendship and believing in yourself, which, as we know, is like this true secret of every superhero movie.
The lesson of every movie that's ever been made. Absolutely. Yeah, because it's 5-2 right now. Got like Phastos, Druig, Cersei, Makari, and Athena going up against Icarus and Sprite, who doesn't matter. Cersei is like sitting alone in a chamber looking at I don't know what. Athena comes in and she says, there's no time for that. And Cersei starts saying, I didn't see the lies right in front of me. And it's like, yeah, I said there's no time for that. But Athena, I guess there is time for that, because Athena, talks about Gilgamesh and how Cersei loves all the people in the world. It is hopeless. We have lost. But Cersei says, you know what? I'm going to try anyway. Like every lead character in every movie ever made. So Phastos runs in, and he has a bright idea to use the sphere that Cersei uses to communicate with Arishem to create the Unimind. So it turns out we really are going to have to hear the word Unimind a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. For the rest of the movie, we're going to hear Unimind and Emergence so many times that they lose all meaning.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I do love to see a glowing orb in a movie. It's always fun to have a glowing orb.
Glowing orbs are fun. Yeah. So he uses his glittery hand power to take the glowing orb outside of her. That's the other thing, actually. It's believe in yourself, be true to your friends, and have glittery hand power. And you can do almost anything. So Phastos has what is basically a one-person training montage where he builds the thing, whatever it is that he's trying to build. And then they all suit up for their big adventure. They end up on a beach near a volcano, which I don't really entirely understand. Basically, what happens is now Icarus is the big bad. And so everybody has to individually have a fight with Icarus. And so first up, Icarus versus Athena. She has been super useless so far in this movie. So it's good that at least she makes the effort to show up for the finale and try to do something. So she's fighting Icarus, and this is actually great. She's fighting Icarus, And meanwhile, Cersei and Makari and Druig are using their bracelets, and Druig's trying to do stuff. And Icarus fights Thena until he realizes that she's just a distraction, which is what she's been this whole goddamn movie.
Yep, to the plot and to the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out Icarus kind of realizes that that's the fact. And so he sees the Unimind bullshit going on. So he attacks them and he grabs Druig and he throws him down and shoots him with laser eyes. And then he attacks their black monolith ship. And there's a rapid, unscheduled disassembly and the ship crashes. And so now it's just the four of them against Icarus. And so now Makari is like, well, you know what? I'm going to try too. And so now everyone keeps taking a turn, trying real hard to fight Superman. Problem with this movie, once again, in the end, it is a long battle sequence, which we do not need, between indestructible characters. I've been complaining about this since Superman 2, back in 1980. Again, if you have a fight scene with indestructible characters, it can go on forever. And at the end of it, everyone is still exactly the same as they were when you started.
Couldn't agree more. But at least with this, it's not so much like who's going to defeat one another, more of who's going to distract the other for longer. Right. So, because really all they need to do, and it is just a numbers game, they just need to distract Icarus for long enough. For it starts with Druig, but then it's Cersei of they just need to, eliminate.
But he's trying to distract them for long enough for the emergence to happen. So it is just a distraction game.
Yeah, but at least there's a ticking clock. And in any movie, a ticking clock adds some tension. And so
that is always fun.
And the iota of something interesting to there. And I think the one other thing that's interesting in this final battle scene is it's always fun to watch, different types of powers battle against each other. That's why we loved Civil War. That's why we loved the first Avengers movie, is because there's going to be something unique that you might have read in a comic book, but you haven't seen
now you gotta see
on a huge IMAX screen before. And so there is some fun here. And they actually do find a way to give even Makari and Phastos ways to actually battle Superman essentially in somewhat interesting ways.
Phastos actually turns out to be the big star. I'm super impressed with that. And I really love what happens with him. Yeah. You think that through the whole movie that he doesn't have, he's the weapons guy. He's like Q or whatever. He stays behind in the lab and creates things for everybody, which is what he's doing. That's, the whole Unimind, that's his idea. And it's this thing that he has built. And then he just comes out, and I'm not even sure what he does, but he puts his little glowy machine hands together and he makes something that actually ties Icarus down and just traps him on the ground for it doesn't completely last the whole time, but it lasts for a really long time. And it's fun and kind of visually surprising. So I like that one. The smart deviant comes back, who, like you said, is just fighting them to be a dick for no reason. He kind of is fighting with Thena. Cersei gets to the volcano, and then Sprite stabs her in the back.
Yep. The worst character in the movie does the worst thing.
The worst thing.
Mm. And then she gives a monologue. Boo.
I always hated humans because I couldn't grow up, fall in love, have a family, and know in the end that I've lived. This is completely unearned. Sprite, nobody needs to hear this from you right now. No. We never liked you. We like you even less. It's the same sad violin from all the way back at the beginning of the movie. No one cares.
But then the third worst character does something actually wonderful.
Which is what?
He hits a child in the head with a rock.
That's right. Here comes Druig, our hero, knocks Sprite out. And actually, it's great. He knocks her out. She falls. The camera does not follow her. She just drops to the ground and out of sight. And we leave her there. They go on and have the rest of the scene. And Sprite is just back there somewhere, possibly bleeding out. It's pretty great. So yeah. I am happy with how Sprite is treated.
Yeah.
Thena's still fighting the Deviant. Not really sure what that has to do with anything. She finally kills it, which has no real value.
No, it's just this giant distraction. And it's kind of, there's a lot of movies jammed into one here. And so I can understand if this were a sequel, Crow would be the big bad in the sequel. But
imagine how much time we could have saved. How long is this movie? 2 hours, 40 minutes, something like that?
It's 2 hours, 40 minutes, but the final credits are 15 of those.
Just taking all of Thena out and Crow would have killed. That would have been a half hour. That would have been an extra half hour that we could have spent talking to our families.
Yeah.
Whatever island this is, it is falling into the sea somehow. And so now the emergence, the bad thing starts to emerge. There's this huge golden thing rising up out of the water. And it actually takes a minute. I think this is clever that like, and then there's a couple of pillars kind of like coming out. It takes a second for them to pan out far enough for us to see like, oh, that's actually a hand coming up. And
Yeah,
it's a
it's
really
very
nice
cool.
visual. And
It's
I
very
like
cool.
everything about the celestial, like the head of the celestial and the hand of the celestial, like poking up and then getting stuck there. I think is gorgeous. Like I love it. I really, really like unironically, absolutely love the way that that looks.
Yeah, I mean, we go to the movies to see something that we haven't seen before, and
Exactly.
yeah, this is
It
it.
absolutely nails it. Yeah. It's funny to think about like other people coming by later and being like, what the fuck is this now?
Yeah, I mean, let's take just half of a beat to think about when we learned about the emergence. It shows literally the Earth exploding, like every
Yes.
human dying, but it really is just a very gentle emergence. He
He's
just kind of
peeking out.
peeking out
It's
a
like,
little bit,
hey
like
everybody.
there's no tsunamis, there's no like the poles aren't reversing. There's a little bit of lava, but
That is true. This might have been kind of built up by Irisham to be a bigger deal. He's just kind of coming out to wave hi to
yeah,
everybody.
just
Hey, hello.
and I mean, the baby is being birthed head first, which is always good. You
That is
always
good.
want that.
And Cersei uses her power and changes the celestial into ice. And then it's just stuck there.
I don't think it's ice. I think it's marble.
Is it? I thought it was
Yeah.
ice. All
Well,
right.
yeah.
Marble's good too.
I mean, I thought about this for longer than it deserves, but like if Tiamat is let's say 30% of the planet's mass,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's any semblance of science to this, like if it's ice, then the Earth will collapse. So it has to be rock, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. And it feels like just a great way to resolve this problem. They made a big deal about like, are we gonna kill this thing? Or are we gonna put it to sleep? And I think turning it into a rock is, I think, the way to go.
But they are killing it.
Yeah. But who cares? It's a fucking celestial.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, all right, okay. So we got, is this movie trying to tell us a lesson about capitalism? Is it trying to talk about climate change? Or is it an abortion movie?
That's a really good point.
Oof.
Yeah. Icarus breaks free. He finds Cersei. He's gonna murder her. But then he hesitates and he thinks about touching her hand and the wedding. It's gross because he's a psychopath, but it is actually, they have spent time and narrative energy on this relationship, and it does save the world. And it actually is kind of nice that Icarus makes the choice himself not to do that based on his character traits and based on his experiences. I'm going to allow that. Everybody flies up into the air. They create the Unimind to give Cersei the power to freeze the whole Celestial. She does the trying very hard scream, ah, trying so hard. And it's a good ending. I gotta say, it's a good ending. So now we're left with Icarus, who cries and says, "I'm sorry." And Cersei says, "I know." And then he stands up and he knows, to his credit, he knows he's fucked up. And he flies away and he leaves the Earth. He takes a moment to look back at it. And then Icarus flies too close to the sun.
He doesn't fly too close to the sun.
Well, just really, really too close because he's consumed by it. He flies into it. And that's the end of that.
For the most part, you're like swept up in the moment of like they just defeated the villain, and like there's that very sweet moment between the two of them, and so like you're kind of lost in it.
Mm-hmm.
But then like he just runs away and kills himself rather than taking like any iota of responsibility.
That is true. He does kind of run away like a little coward.
Yeah.
He does say, "I'm sorry," which is the most difficult thing that a male entity can do. So you got to give him credit on that. At this point, you're watching the stream and you're like, oh my God, there's 24 minutes left in this movie, which luckily is not actually the case because almost all of that is credits. But there is still some more. They are all left here on the beach, whoever's left, and they are going to try and figure out how to justify, can we have a sequel? Is there anything interesting that we can do in a sequel? And are we popular enough to be in the next Avengers team up? These are the major questions that you need to resolve at the end of this movie. Cersei decides to use excess energy to make Sprite into a human so that she can be older if and when there's a next movie. And that's the end of that. 2 weeks later, now we got the flash forward. 2 weeks later, everybody's at Ajax Place. watching TV, and Fastos' husband is there, and his kid is there. Hooray, Jack is back. And they have kind of like a cute little scene about Jack and Fastos telling Druig not to go anywhere near him. Now the boring Eternals are gonna get in the spaceship and go fly away and find more Eternals.
All right, Danny, how many hours into that space voyage until they run out of conversation topics?
Immediately, almost immediately. Well, no, actually, I'm sorry, that's not true. Thena never runs out of conversation topics because she just says, "I'm trying to remember. I remember Gilgamesh." She'll just say that over and over again for the next 95 light years. It's gonna be awful.
Ooh, I hope that's not the sequel we get.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be it. Sprite's going to school somewhere. I guess they're sending her off to Hogwarts.
Still annoying.
Still annoying. She hugs Cersei and says, "I'm going to miss you." Person that I knifed in the back 5 minutes ago. Gonna miss you. I bet you will. Kinga and Karun come back. They have a little moment, which is nice to see them once again. And then we end up with a Cersei and Dame seat, which is where he's super cute again. And it was kind of like it was a scene that we wanted. It's too late. But he has a secret for himself, and he's gonna tell her something about his family history because he's a whole other character. And then Arishem appears above the earth and grabs Cersei and takes her away and grabs all the other ones. And he says, "You have chosen to sacrifice a celestial. I will spare them, but your memories will show if they are worthy to live, and I will return for judgment." And he disappears. And Dane is sad, and the movie is almost over.
Listeners may have picked up that something that's important to me is just like any kind of respect for physics. I don't need it to be like 100% accurate, but if it's so bad that that's one of those things that takes me out of the movie. And Arishem appearing, who's larger than a planet, which is obviously going to like pull Earth off of its axis, and then he disappears into a little black hole, which can't possibly be good.
Yeah, that's not going to be good for anybody.
It's very distressing. But I do want to give credit to all of the Londoners. When Arishem appears and then disappears, like this is all after the blip. Like they've seen some really insane shit, and so they're just like a little confused. They're just more curious than frightened.
Everyone's been trying to take a picture of it. That's the most realistic thing in the entire movie, is that like the world is ending because there's this enormous terrifying thing, and everyone's just taking pictures with their phone. And so then the credits start and are interrupted with, "This is my first mid-credit scene." This is in the podcast, including like the ones that I did with the Signal Watch and now the ones I'm doing here. This is the first time I've got a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene, which is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these, now at this point, unfortunately, it's 2021. Both of these are like trailers for movies that might never exist.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that I believe in these anymore, because like there's Brett Goldstein as Hercules and Kit Harington as the Black Knight, and then here comes Harry Styles, and it's kind of saying like, you want to see these movies, right? Like post on Twitter that you want to see these movies. So this mid-credit scene is basically like, look, if you come back for another Eternals movie, we'll have Harry Styles in that one, we promise.
I hate Harry Styles. I just like I would actually prefer Sprite be in the next movie over Harry Styles. Yeah.
Yeah, the mid-credit scene, it's got Patton Oswalt kind of clowning around, and then Harry Styles coming in, and it's really entirely based on the idea that you know and love who Harry Styles is. For me personally, like I know who he is. I don't really have a connection to him. I actually, in Thor Love and Thunder, where it's Zeus talking and then it kind of pans up and you see Brett Goldstein as Hercules, and everybody in the theater got very, very excited, including me. So that was like, yes, no, oh my God, I want to see that movie. And for this one, I didn't feel like there was that same energy around Harry Styles. It was just like, oh my God, we got it. No. But maybe we'll see him. The post-credits is Dane possibly getting his own movie, has a sword in his office at the museum, and it whispers to him. Because he is the Black Knight. I don't know if you know this character. He's the Black Knight. This is the Ebony Blade, which is actually a takeoff from Elric of Melnibone. It's a Michael Moorcock book. I'm now taking you like 3 steps like through all the like fictional things that this is a reference to. He's almost going to touch this black sword, and then somebody says, "Are you sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?" And that's the voice of Mahershala Ali, who's playing Blade. So this is all very, very complicated, and the message that we are left with: Eternals will return.
That is so threatening. How dare they?
I have no, and I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe that's true. I couldn't say.
Yeah,
And that is the story of Eternals.
that's the story of Eternals. So Mahershala Ali might be the best actor the MCU has ever gotten. Phenomenal, fantastic.
Yes.
But that Blade movie is going to be terrible. Like, how many directors have they burned through? How many rewrites do they have to do? It's like one of those like haunted productions where it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, this ain't going to be good.
Yeah. Blade is tough. Blade is tough to do. And apparently so is pronouncing his name, which I clearly did not do correctly.
I mean, I think we're both getting it wrong, but all right. Question for the room.
Yes.
Eternals 2.
Yes.
What do you want them to do? Not what plot. What do you want the Eternals to do?
Start a reggae band.
Ooh. See, I was going to say like take accountability for their actions and maybe learn some humility, but I think Reggae Band is
Way better. Yeah,
It translates better to screen.
it definitely does.
I mean, the MCU and all of Disney properties, they're trying to do less with less. And so I honestly doubt we'll actually see in Eternals 2. We might see one or two of them in one of the Avengers movies or something, but
I'm really hoping that we get the Kit Harington thing, whatever it is, whether that turns out to be in Blade or in a movie by himself. I gotta see that boy again. He's so cute.
Yeah. To me, like 7 out of the 10 Eternals are actually interesting in some way or form.
Mm-hmm.
And like there could have been something really interesting here. And like, yeah, if you edit
There's
it down
definitely
or
this is 100% a movie. Some of these movies, I'm like, would there be any way to save this? Like, I think the 2003 Hulk, I just think is unsalvageable. There's basically nothing there of any value. But Eternals, there definitely is. It's actually kind of frustrating. It's not a terrible movie. But then when I think about it and I break it down, I'm like, well, except the premise is terrible and offensive, anti-evolution, and it's colonial. So I don't like any of that. And most of the characters I don't like.
yeah.
And
We probably are giving it too much credit than it deserves.
but I think you and I are, I mean, we have a point that like, but there are parts and sometimes large parts, like big scenes and big like sections where it's actually pretty good.
Yep.
And as ridiculous as everybody is treating things, like having those two big plot points in the middle, it actually keeps things moving and makes things surprising and interesting all the way through.
Yeah. And they give you characters that you actually care about that you hope that they pull through. All right. Question.
Yes.
Do you think that you and I are searching for something redeeming in this movie because we want the MCU machine to keep operating at its, high caliber that it has been? Are we apologists for the Eternals?
I make no apologies for, I am actually on the record on the blog as saying, I want as much MCU stuff as possible. They can just keep churning out movies and churning out TV shows. And I'm still gonna watch them. It turns out like I'm a fan of just watching the way it plays out.
Yeah.
Even more than the individual pieces at this point.
Yeah. And I think that's always been the really fascinating thing about the MCU is like, not just the fact that the movies are good or great, but that also like the humans on Earth, like Kevin Feige and all of the producers, like
amazing.
they made all of these things actually make sense. They made us give a shit about Infinity Stones for like a decade.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then it paid off.
They came real close to making me watch Moon Knight. I watched about an episode and a half of it, and I came real close to watching the rest.
So this podcast is pivotal moments in superhero movie history.
Yes, it is.
So do you want to talk about why we're talking or why we chose this movie as a podcast?
Definitely. What makes Marvel's Eternals a pivotal moment, Trevor, in superhero movie history?
All right. We just talked about defending the Eternals as a good, potentially good if you kind of cross your eyes movie. Yeah. But I actually think the Eternals broke the MCU.
Tell me why.
Maybe not broke entirely and irreparably, but if you look at kind of where they are today in 2023, like they are firing producers, they are canceling projects, they are scaling back, reevaluating what the hell is going on. And it wasn't just because one movie was bad. It's because a handful of movies were underwhelming, starting with Eternals. And I guess Black Widow was like just okay, but that released in June, and so like not everybody was vaccinated then. Like let's not forget that 2021, the big conversation everybody was having was which vaccine did you get?
Yeah.
But yeah, Eternals was like its first not fresh, and then it hasn't really recovered since. They haven't had like a great movie
They did
since.
No Way Home, and then No Way Home kind of knocked it out. That was a month later. But besides that, there's Eternals, and then there was Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which sucked, which I hated. Thor
Yeah.
Love and Thunder, which I had huge hopes for because I loved Ragnarok so much and was not that great. There was Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which was its own weird thing. And then Quantum Mania. So yeah, besides Spider-Man No Way Home, it's been a rough year and a half for sure.
And I mean, it's like, let's be honest, it's only been one calendar year, and they've got more in the can, and like never count them out. But I think Eternals is like the first, flaw in the plan, and yeah, it might prove that Kevin Feige,
He's fallible.
he's fallible, and like this might actually run out of steam. And if you look to the decade before, it was all franchises, and it's probably going to be a different kind of franchise after this. But I don't know.
You know what it is? Eternals, it's the good dinosaur of the MCU.
Ooh.
I know, harsh, right? But it's the one. It's the one that makes you look at it and say, maybe it's not inevitable.
Oh, are we going to talk about toys?
The funny thing about the toys is that they are still available. Hasbro Marvel Legends, it was a set called Build a Figure, where they made 7 toys. And if you got all 7 of them, they each had a part of Gilgamesh. And so you could get like the 8th, you could get the Gilgamesh. If you bought the other 7, then you'd also have the Gilgamesh. So you'd have a set of 8. Why you want a set of 8 of these things, I have no idea. It was Icarus, Makari, Sprite, Circe, Phastos, Kingo, and Druig. I don't know who wants a Druig figure. What would you do if you had a Druig figure in your life? But the amazing thing is, you can go to any site and they're saying like outlet deal was $29.99 or was $22.99, now down to $7.81. At GameStop, it's marked down currently from $8.97 to $6.28, and they are still trying to get those toys out of the warehouse. The other funny thing, and so this is the Wave 1 Gilgamesh series, but I don't believe they made a Wave 2. And one thing that is weird is that on the packages, it says like Phastos and Kingo and Druig, and then it says Marvel's Icarus, Marvel's Circe, and Marvel's Sprite. And I understand for Sprite, maybe they're trying to specify it's not a soft drink. But I don't know what they're trying to say around Icarus and Circe. Trevor Bolliger, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm going to head back to the Domo and go off to ruin some more planets.
Oh, that sounds great. For more comedy about the history of superhero movies, you can go to the blog at superheroeseveryday.com. If you like the show, please leave a review, or you could reach me on Twitter, Facebook, or on the blog. It'd be great to hear from you. And please tell your friends about the show. Next week on the podcast, I've got a special guest. Dark Shadows and Doctor Who TV writer and audio producer Joe Lidster will be here to talk about the 2022 Bloodstruck blockbuster. That's right, it's Morbin time, and we are talking about Morbius. There's only one quantity of bats that there are in this film, which is too many bats.
I think people want boys to have this unnamed blood disease. They just don't want there to be a cure.
Then we get into the major question of the movie, which is, where the fuck are we now? Milo says we're the original Spartans. Again, the few against the many.
Who are you against?
It sounds like they're being oppressed. They tried to give you the Nobel Prize, and you said no.
Maybe Matt Smith hired them a really nice cruise liner with a really nice crew. Jared went all the way onto the boat, went up to the nice captain, went up to him and went, "Oi, fuck off," like he did to the King of Sweden.
Do you think that mercenaries ever go to movies and they're like, hey, why are we the bad guys all the time? Like, that's got to be discouraging for them. All right, get excited for that. Come back next week for the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening. Love you. Bye.
Trevor Bolliger. You think you're the only superhero podcast guest in the world? Trevor, you've become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Who the hell are you?
Ryan Steens, the Signal Watch podcast. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.